you go look at science fiction, if you want to look at movies, mankind loves this stuff. People want to talk about the unknown.
Yeah.
People love to watch movies about ghosts and spooky stories. People want to learn about if there's another life form on other planets out there and what would they look like. And along comes with a lot of that baggage. In nestled deep within it, there are some nuggets of truth. You know, people do see strange craft flying around at night, whether they're secret technology that belongs to, you know, the military industrial complex or otherwise, but people see them, and it has instigated stories, and people have had events happen to them that have become famous for it, especially in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. A lot of people had a lot of stories happen to them. So mankind has always been interested in these things, and it's played a part in shaping you know, entertainment and other things in the West.
Pop culture and all of that.
Pop culture, exactly. But there is a nexus point where those stories and reality kind of meet. And in 2017, when I was blessed enough to be able to spend some time in Medina, some strange information got released by people who are part of a secret program in the American government. And these were whistleblowers, right? Who stepped forward, and some videos were released as well. And I'd always, even when I was young, as a non-Muslim, as a young boy,
we're going to get into those.
I had some reason to be interested in these topics. So as an adult, as a Muslim studying in Jamia, I realized that this was an area that we don't really have much on. We have information about the jinn, but no one had really made a clear link from a scholarly or academic perspective between the two. So that became my interest, especially after these revelations. In 2017, when what happened was, in America, there was a number of individuals who worked for a program, the UAP Task Force. What they were doing is they were monitoring using the advanced systems they have, radar and satellite imagery. And what they found was some anomalous technology had been operating in America and in war zones. And they had a number of pilots as well who was witness to these strange craft appearing.
You're talking about UFOs.
Yeah, I'm talking about UFOs, but it has a new name. It's designated UAP now, which is unidentified anomalous phenomena. But in 2017, it was known as a UAP then, but it was a new acronym. Everyone still knew them as UFOs. And when you say the word UFO, what happens is Hollywood immediately comes to mind. So you think of, Strange Encounters of the Third Kind. Was that what it was called?
I think so. Yeah,
I always forget the name of the movie.
Spielberg movie.
That Spielberg movie. E.T. is another one that comes to mind. And a few other sort of Hollywood movies that. What's that one with Will Smith in it where they crash land?
What is it? Independence
Day. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Independence Day with the alien ship comes in, the mothership, and So when you hear those words, that's what you think. You think science fiction, but in reality, there's people for decades, 80 plus years, who have been saying that they've seen anomalous saucer-shaped or silver-looking craft in the sky. And in fact, and I know we're going to talk about this probably in another time, but in fact, the further you go back in history, you find reference to these things in the sky going way, way back. I mean, there's the Nuremberg case is a famous one. Won't get into it, but there were people who said there was a battle in the sky between chariots of fire. So these are things that have been known to mankind for some time, but now in the modern days we look through the lens of science fiction. So in 2017 when these guys came forward, there was one particular man, his name is Lou Elizondo, who came forward, and his job was to try to identify these craft using the available technology and find out what they are, what they're doing, what they're capable of doing. And he came up with the idea of something he called the 5 observables, which denote what a UAP is. So instantaneous travel was one of these things. So this is not a craft like conventional where you have some sort of build up or, like a jet that flies off, from an aircraft hangar and builds up speed from 0 to whatever. This thing travels instantaneously. So accelerates instantaneously. They don't have what would be associated with a conventional aircraft, like an exhaust system where heat comes out. These things don't have a heat signature. They don't show what you would expect thermo changes to a propulsion system, because whenever you turn an engine on, bro, it gets hot. Anything you do, what you do is you put fuel in, you burn it, and out comes an exhaust. These things are not showing these what you would expect. So these seem to have novel propulsion systems. So these are the type of work that he was doing in this program, and he identified these UAP, if you want to call them that, as legitimate things that occur across the world. It weren't just in America, as some people try to say. These are a global phenomenon.
Where in the world is the link to the jinn? Like all I'm hearing is UFOs, aliens, probably extraterrestrials from another planet, possibly. Universe is vast. We don't have to go into the theological stuff yet. We'll get to that near the end.
Sure.
But just generally from a logical perspective, the universe is vast. There are so many stars within our own galaxy and elsewhere, and it's very possible that there's other planets and So from what you've said, it seems like we're dealing with extraterrestrials, and that is one of the key ideas that's out there. So build a case for us very succinctly.
Sure.
Where is the link to the jinn? What are you doing? What gymnastics are you engaging in to give us this type of hypotheses? What we call the jinn hypothesis. How? Explain that to me.
This is the crux of. So just to recap briefly, right? We've got these whistle. It's not just Lou. We've had a number of whistleblowers since then. We would predominantly talk about 2017, but we've had a number of congressional hearings of other whistleblowers coming forward. One famous is named David Grush. He says they have a entire reverse engineering program that have been operating in secrecy. They call it a legacy program that has been collecting these craft, reverse it. So just to establish that these things are real. And it isn't a state actor. It isn't Russia. It isn't China. This is as they describe it, a non-human intelligence. And this is where we start making the link to the jinn. So effectively, if we collect what the whistleblowers say and we accept at face value what they're saying, is that there is a non-human intelligence, and according to David Grush, that it is more than likely a interdimensional.
What does he mean by interdimensional?
He's saying that they live, they're not from another planet, but rather they live on this planet, just in a place where we can't see them. I'll give you an example.
Like a parallel
dimension. A parallel universe, or a parallel dimension. But I'll give you an example that we can all sort of understand, The microbiology of our bodies is, for want of a better word, another dimension, a two-dimensional universe that exists inside our body. If you were to tell someone 300-400 years ago that on the tip of your nose is an entire life of creatures that
entire civilization,
it's like a life form on the tiny tip of your nose. There's a life form there that part of the regulatory system of your body, keeps you healthy. And if you upset those creatures, they make you sick. But if you look after them and look after you'll be fine. Like, this sounds bizarre, but that is the actual reality. We are, if for want of a better word of describing it, we are interdimensional beings towards these microbiotic life forms. We regularly take medicines that manipulate this world, this microbiotic world. We take samples out of our body, we put it in the microscope, and then we create synthetic versions in order to manipulate that world again. We create clones, if you like, and put them back in our body to make them do what we want it to do. It sounds very bizarre when you look at us from the perspective of the microbiology. We are, in essence, a very strange creature. As is described in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Iblis and his tribe, they see you from a place where you don't see them. So Allah establishes, for any Muslim out there, I would hope that every Muslim believes in the jinn wholeheartedly, as is described in the Quran and the Sunnah. So the jinn are a creature that lives in a place where they see us and we don't see them. So we are immediately at some sort of disadvantage because of sight. They see us, we don't see them. They can interact with us in a way that we can't interact with them. They can whisper into our minds where we can't whisper into theirs. They can go inside of our body. If you accept the consensus is that they can possess the human being. The jinn fly, as is described in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They come and go, they visit, and then they disappear. They come and they go, and they visit human beings, interchangeably, or they come into this planet or into our part of this world, and they go away, however you want to interpret that. And they come in the forms of dogs and other such creatures. And the Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah expands it beyond dogs, and he mentions that they come in other forms like birds and so on and so forth. So the jinn, when we look at who the jinn are and what they're capable of doing and how they're known as handicrafters and builders, as is mentioned by Sheikh Umar al-Ashqar in his book, The World of the Jinn and Devils, he actually speculates that the TVs and phones and things like that were probably created aforetime by the jinn, as he mentions a historical report from the time of Shaykh al-Islam, that how certain devices were given to some of these masters who worked alongside the jinn, and they gave them devices that sound like the modern smartphone. But the Sheikh, Dr. Umar al-Ashqar, at that time they didn't have smartphones when he wrote the book. So he said, it seems that these jinn had handicraft back in them times, like TVs and other things that we were unaware of. So many scholars, or at least Sheikh Umar al-Ashqar, made the link to technology in the jinn beforehand. Allah describes them as builders in the Quran, that they build things, and they built amazing things for Sulaiman. And they had capabilities, as mentioned in the Quran, that other human beings didn't have. So when we observe and we hear that these whistleblowers are saying, A, these 5 governments are working together on a project that is monitoring and collecting handicrafts created by non-human intelligence. These handicrafts give them exceptional capabilities of travel, so instantaneous travel from one spot to another, exactly as is mentioned in the Quran. That they see us from a place we don't see them, and they phase in and out of reality. This is exactly how it's described by people on the inside. There's one particular scientist who had an event occur to him, who was his name's Dr. Masters. He's actually wrote a piece on it now, and it's been published.
Cryptoterrestrial.
Cryptoterrestrial paper that
published on ResearchGate.
Yeah, was it? And it was when it through Stanford University. It was one of the bigger.
It was 3 academics, 3 PhDs.
That's
2
right.
2 PhDs and 1 academic. I'm not sure, but they published the paper on
ResearchGate. Cryptoterrestrial. He had a very, very anomalous event occur to him with regard to possession. So when we sort of line up, and we unfortunately we haven't had the time to get into all of the stories that circulate this, but this is where the jinn link comes in. What we have here is a number of whistleblowers saying that our governments are working clandestine, monitoring and capturing devices that are not made by other people on this planet. These are devices that are super advanced, way further ahead technologically than we are. And they're giving the American and the Brits some sort of advantage over other countries in the world because of these types of technology. And they seem to be very, very obsessed about keeping this quiet. So much so that they will kill people who are going to blow the whistle on this. And there has been, and there is many reports of whistleblowers saying that people have died who have tried to come out and to bring, let's say, more concrete proof, i.e. actual technology. People have tried to they've been killed. So that's where I think the link to the jinn come through, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that on the day of judgment there will be an incident that will occur. On that day Allah will address the jinn and he will say, "O people of the jinn, you have misled many of mankind." But then a group from mankind will step forward and they will say, "Yes, some of us made use of others, and we have now reached the term that you have appointed us." So there is a group from humanity who work alongside them. And this is what seems to be indicated by these whistleblowers, that there is a group of humanity who are aware of these things, maybe in awe of them. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that some of the most advanced military facilities have a lot of symbology related to idolatry.
What do you mean?
I'll give you an example. There seems to be an obsession with the zodiac. So you'll find a lot of the programs, the space programs, and it's moreover, like the history of these space programs are entwined with black magic, and people who seem to participate in the occult And it's well known, by the way. I'm not saying something for people who don't know and haven't done the research. It sounds odd, but in these most advanced and let's say secretive programs, many researchers, one is Diana Pasulka, for example, has highlighted that a lot of the names of the programs, a lot of the names of the ships. So Diana Pasulka has mentioned that many researchers in these fields like space and in the rocket program, like Jack Parsons, for example, he believed that information was coming to him from another creature that was telling him, and they call it, even in the modern times this happens, by the way, like, don't think this is restricted to the 50s. There are people who are going on the record today saying that I'm not inventing these technologies or creating them,
downloads,
but rather this is being fed to me from another creature that I'm in contact with. People say muses of old is the exact same thing. A muse would come in their mind. People put it like down to like a cute or poetic way of saying, thought, but really a muse was actually just a jinn giving information to people. So this Jack Parsons, he believed he was receiving information from another creature that was telling him how to create these rockets, right? And guiding him towards these discoveries that he made. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-An'am that, as it mentioned, and thus we have made for every prophet an enemy from devils from mankind and jinn, inspiring into one another decorative speech in delusion. But if your Lord had willed, they would not have done it, so leave them and that which they invent. In here we have some indication, to say the least, that inspiration and ideas do come from the devil, and it's put into our mind, and they mislead and misguide. Even black magicians, people who do black magic, they have these little codes, little drawings, little writings that they do. Now, to draw a little picture of this and to put the letter ba, or to draw somebody's face, some of these tawees that people have opened. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos. When they cut them open, there's weird pictures and writings and things like that. This is all part and parcel of, how the shayateen and the devils misguide mankind. And this is no different than that. Except instead of it being a tawees, it's a computer program.
It's just a new age version.
New age tawees, bro.
Parsons' story is very interesting because Parsons was the direct student of Aleister Crowley.
Yes.
And Crowley was himself trying to make contact with this being called Lam, as he referred to. And Parsons seemed to be doing the very same thing in the deserts of, I think, California, if I'm not mistaken, where he was trying to make contact with these beings to inspire him. And he's known as one of the founding fathers of rocketry in America.
Yes, absolutely.
A big figure behind NASA, etc. So we know he was engaging in rituals in the desert. This is history. People can go read this up. I think it was called the Babylonian Workings or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
Which was, occult practice essentially. And it was also fascinating, bro, is that this phenomenon of humans trying to engage with these beings to attain some sort of information or knowledge has been going on for a very long time.
Yes.
Even in modern Western history or the Enlightenment, many of the key movers and shakers and figures who were pushing on the public front materialism and secularism and atheism and progress and science and all of this stuff, behind closed doors, they were engaging in occult practices.
100%.
They were trying to make contact with these beings and entities. They were engaging in alchemy, doing all this stuff, right? So you see that, and again, from that we see that there's this trend, historical trend, which repeats itself, where certain people who are movers and shakers or want to become movers and shakers within society turn to the occult or trying to engage with these beings who we refer to as the jinn.
Yes.
Now, what you're saying by Parsons' story, and I think this is an important link to make, is what you're highlighting by the Parsons' story is that if we're looking at this modern UFO phenomenon now, American government, craft, etc., if you trace it back to, I think it was the early 40s when these sightings started to happen.
Yeah.
Just before the first recorded popular sighting of Thomas Arnold, which took place.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Late 40s, I think.
That's right.
46, 47, I don't remember the date exactly. Parsons was engaging in these rituals in the desert.
He was.
Just before this.
Yes.
And then the floodgates open, right? So he's engaging in occult practices in the desert, trying to contact these beings. A few years later or shortly after, you have this huge flap of UFOs and this whole thing comes into existence. Parsons was somehow linked to, what's his name? Thomas Arnold as well.
Yeah.
They were friends or had mutual friends. And then that gave rise to the Collins elite. I don't know if you want to touch upon that.
Yeah, we could.
But I think the point to emphasize what you're saying is that there is a clear occult link with
No
even
doubt.
this modern UFO phenomenon which is being witnessed in America.